welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I'm going to teach you something super valuable. Make sure you like and subscribe and check us out at Universal Accounting Center. So, hey, you're in the arena. How to read the prospect, okay? You're in the sales call. I call it the arena. You're in the game, though. How to diagnose what's going on so that you can ask the right questions or make the right statements or take it in the right direction. Well, I'm going to teach you how to do that. Remember, in these videos, we're thousands of dollars that you would buy a sales program for. I give it to you for free. All right, so make sure you write all this down. So let's start with this. The first mistake every salesperson makes, okay? Well, most salespeople think they're talking to a prospect. You're not at all. You're actually speaking to their memories, their fears, their beliefs, their identity, future ambition. So the person on the Zoom call or on that call or in person with you isn't the one making the decisions. The story they believe about themselves is actually controlling the buying process. So this is where most accountants completely miss what's happening, because you'll have a prospect say something stupid like, I need to think about it. And you actually believe that crap. You believe that, okay? And a behavioral psychologist would ask instead, what belief is creating that statement? And those are completely two different levels of awareness. All right, let's go to the next module. The human brain is a prediction machine. And once you understand this is going to change everything. Most people think the brain exists to think. It doesn't. The brain exists to predict, okay? Every second of your day, your prospect's brain is asking, well, what happens next? Is this safe? Is this dangerous? Will this help me? Will this hurt me? Can I trust this person? It's called the amygdala back here, okay? It's protecting them. The mammalian brain you're fighting against. It's been the same brain forever. So once you know how to beat it, it's easy to knock out. But think about yourself, for example. You're the same exact way when you go to buy things, right? You're hesitant. You ask. You run all those same questions, right? Because before logic enters, before analysis enters, before pricing enters, the brain's already making predictions. Your brain's already making predictions. That's why first impressions matter. Your first impression matters. The prospect isn't evaluating your service. They're evaluating whether you belong in their prediction model. All right? Let's go to the next module. The 4 layers of human communication. Okay? Most salespeople only hear layer 1. Elite advisors operate in all 4 simultaneously at the same time. Okay? Here's layer 1. Layer 1 is words. And you'll hear what they say. Business is good. We're doing okay. Money really isn't the issue. Right? Worth almost nothing. What good is that information? Nada. Let's go to layer 2. Emotion. Okay? How they say it. Fast, slow, confident, hesitant, frustrated, excited. See, what happens here is this is where the truth starts leaking. Bleeding out in what they're saying. Their tonality. Subtle clues. Layer 3, identity, okay? Who they believe they are. That's big time, right? So you have to listen for it, and they'll give it away. You have to actively listen. So this ear, I always say your left ear should be actively listening, and the right ear is downloading data how to take your opponent down. All right, listen for things like, I've always done this, I'm not the type to do this, I usually do this, I've never been someone who did X. So that's identity. Okay, so now you're hearing identity, and you have to understand, in order to close deal, the type of identity they have. Identity drives behavior. So once I can identify the identity, I can speak to it, right? Layer 4. This is the deepest layer. That's why I made it the last layer. Every decision making is asking this, okay? And make sure you're writing these down. You're only hurting your future firm. Will I gain status? Will I lose status? Will I gain security? Will I lose security? Okay, will I gain certainty? Will I lose certainty? This layer drives nearly every buying decision, okay? Hey, let's go to the next module. Why people don't tell you the truth. Notice I'm taking a pause here, because this actually might be the most important lesson in sales, is that people lie. They're liars. You can't believe them, all right? You can't believe them! Not because they're bad people, because they're protecting their identity. A business owner will rarely tell you, hey, I'm scared. Instead, they'll say, I need to think about it. They're going to rarely say, I'm afraid of falling. Instead, they'll say, well, now isn't the time. Right? See, the conscious mind creates explanations. The emotional mind. Gotta get the deal emotional. The emotional mind creates decisions, right? Your job is to understand the emotional decision, not argue with the explanation, right? Let's go to the next module. The 3 emotions that drive most sales. Look, People think buying is complex. It's not. Most purchasing decisions are driven by 3 emotional states. It's fear, frustration, and aspiration. Let me break these down. So when I say fear, what do I mean? Well, the fear of losing money, missing opportunity. They don't want to look stupid, right? Falling behind the local competition, local competitors. They don't want to let their family down. Last thing they want is losing control. So what we have is, and write this down, is that fear creates movement, right? All right, let's go to frustration. Frustration is often stronger than fear, all right? People tolerate problems until they don't. Once frustration exceeds tolerance, that's when we have change happen, okay? And aspiration. Guys, aspiration is all about the future self, the vision, the dream. The business owner isn't buying accounting, they're buying the version of themselves they become after using your services. So I might go from having unorganized books to now having organized books. I like that version of my future version of myself. I feel organized and I identify as a person who is organized. So I'm playing to the tune, playing to the flute. All right, how to identify the dominant emotion? How to identify the dominant emotion? Guys, write this down. Ask. I love this question. What keeps you up at night? What keeps you awake at night? Fear. Okay, it's a fear question. The next one's a pain question. Talk to me about what's frustrating you most right now. Right? The next one's the aspiration question. If we solve this perfectly, what changes? They're going to speak to their future self. Now you're reading the emotional architecture behind the decision. All right? Let's go to the next module. This one's big. The status game nobody talks about. Most people in sales don't talk about how ego and status drive decisions. Well, I will, because I see it all the time. Bunch of arrogant fools. These prospects, right? Broke arrogance. They all have it, right? It's all about their status. Okay, that they have identified themselves, what class they've identified themselves in. So you just have to identify what status they view themselves as, and then you can speak to that status. Look, humans are status-seeking creatures, not just money, status. Every prospect wants to feel smart, successful, respected, competent, in control. And when someone pushes back on your recommendation, they're often protecting their status, not evaluating your recommendation, so that the moment you understand this, objections become easier to understand. All right, give me your mind, okay? And I'm just going to hijack it and give you a bunch of information to help you dominate at the next level. Look, write this down. The hidden signals elite salespeople watch for. So what would I look for on the phone? What do I train my people to look? And look, my people do 60 to 100K every single month. 60K to 100K every single month. All right, so I think I know what I'm talking about. You should have seen my numbers. Insane, right? All right, here's the thing. The hidden signals are this. Energy spikes, write it down. Speech acceleration, write it down. Repetition, write it down. Micro frustrations, write it down. So look, most people are watching body language, but actually what you need to look for are behavioral shifts. So what I mean by that, so energy spikes. So when energy increases, importance increases. So follow it, all right? Speech acceleration. Notice when they start talking faster, emotion has now entered the conversation. Emotion means significance. It's huge. Repetition, okay. Humans repeat what matters. So if they start repeating things, if they mention something 3 times, it's probably the real issue, all right? Micro frustrations. Listen for this. Listen to these words. When they say things like honestly, okay, just trust me on all this stuff. I spent years reading and learning psychology, human behavior, doing sales calls, all of the above. I've taken my decades of learning, just trust me on this. When they start saying the word honestly, to be honest, if I'm being real, usually a deeper truth is coming. Okay, and you're doing good. Bravo to you. You've connected. They're going to tell you. All right, let's go to the next module. The most advanced thing you can learn. Okay, the most advanced thing that you can learn is that people don't buy solutions, they buy transformation. They buy emotional certainty. So let that sink in. A prospect doesn't buy bookkeeping, they buy relief. They don't buy tax planning, they buy confidence. They don't buy your advisory, they buy control of their business. So the service is never the product. The emotional state is the product. I want you to write that down. The emotional, hopefully you're writing it all down, but the emotional state is the product. The service is merely the delivery mechanism. All right, let's go to the next module. Wake up, people. Wake up. Stand up, do some jumping jacks. Have some fun. Pause the video, do some push-ups. Get at it, get active. What are you doing? All right, hey, let's go to the next module. The accountant's advantage, okay? And make sure you're drinking a gallon of water a day. The accountant's advantage. Most salespeople are trying to persuade. What do I mean by that, okay? It means that they're trying to get this person to do what they want them to do. Buy my thing. That's dumb, okay? Accountants have a unique advantage. Business owners already trust accountants with their money, their records, their taxes, their business decisions, and you don't need to become a better persuader. You need to become a better observer, because the person who understands the prospect best usually earns the right to help them, and the person who earns the right to help them usually earns the business. So, on your next 10 sales calls, this is what I want you to do. Stop listening for problems and start listening for fear, frustration, aspiration, identity, status, certainty. And then document what you hear. And you'll discover something shocking. All right? The real sale was never about accounting. The real sale was always about what's happening inside the prospect's mind. So I hope this video helped you. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.